So, welcome back to the PACT Mantality podcast. And this is the first podcast I have done in a very long time, as I've been working very hard to create something special for men and delivering Men's Inner Mastery Academy, which is now a program that has been put out there for men to be, for me to be of service over a sustainable period of time to help men to reach their full potential in life. So, I just wanted to introduce you to the first guest we've had on in a while. And this is a very special lady that I met in May on a program called Trauma to Trust, where we were doing something called myofascia energetic release and really working with the body and how we store trapped emotions within the body and how that affects how we show up in the world. During that training, I met this lady, and she does some very, very interesting work that I am intrigued to find out more. And we've been bouncing a couple of messages between each other on Instagram, and she has kindly, agreed to come on the podcast and share some of the incredible work that she does. So we just wanted to introduce you to Amanda Ashy, who is a parent, child, and women's coach. So welcome, Amanda. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So I just usually start these podcasts just with a little bit of a check-in for what's been alive for you. What have you been up to? I know you're a busy woman. I follow your Instagram content a lot. So if you just want to share with us what's been happening for you lately.
Yeah, so I work with parents. I work with families. So oftentimes, um, mothers come to me because they are struggling with their child and their child's behavior,
Mm,
and they quickly understand that they play a part in that. I think that we're getting to a time now where parents understand that it's not just the child's behavior that needs to change or to improve, that it's actually their responsibility to look at themselves and maybe change how they're showing up, their emotional reactivity, how they regulate themselves,
mm,
and the parenting tactics that they're using. So I feel like in the last 3 years in particular, it's gotten really busy on my end doing this work with families, doing this work with children. And what often happens is um, parents come to me, I work with the parents, I work with the children, and then the mother will then do some one-to-one work with me as well, because um, it's very common for women, for mothers, to
mm,
lose themselves in this role of mother. Um, so we do a lot of work for them to reconnect to themselves, to come back to themselves, and to rediscover who they are after giving themselves away for however many years that they've been on their parenting journey.
mm. Yeah, I think, obviously you met my partner, Carly, and she is very much invested in the women's side of the work, and equally I do the men's side of the work, but at times we have to bring that together in the work that I deliver. If you like, it is very much about sometimes how the man is actually showing up in the relationship and helping them to understand and attune more deeply to women and to actually to the family environment, if you like, in our responsibility as men, and how we are showing up within that. And the role that we play affects the family dynamic, to some capacity, like you say. So how would you say, from the work you're doing, that you see things are changing, in terms of not only how women are showing up, in investing in this type of work, but also in the changes you're seeing in men, in relationships, but also, as fathers in the family unit.
Well, first of all, I think that there's so much pressure on the family unit right now, and that pressure is coming from the demands of the economy, the demands of the grind culture.
Mm,
For so long we lived in this like kill yourself to make it culture, especially in America,
mm,
and the repercussions of that is that everyone is so tightly wound up that it's like everyone is walking on eggshells, and because of that, there's no space. There's no
mm,
space in the mind. There's no space in the body. That that headspace is so
Yeah.
appropriately um, labeled, because no one has the space. And when you don't have the space, you're squeezed. And when you're squeezed, you're much more primed to pop and
Yeah.
to react. And so I am I'm seeing a lot of women who are carrying the mental load, carrying the domestic load,
Mm.
because they take care of everything in the home, they take care of everything with the children, and they are working full-time jobs. You know, they're trying to maintain a career because this is what they did before children came along. You know, many women
Mm.
before children came along were living a life like men. You know, they were well
Yeah.
traveled, they were educated, they had a big group of friends and a big social scene that they were part of. They had a career path that they were following, and they had a lot of freedom. And then the child comes along, and we kind of step back into the roles that were developed decades ago, where the main responsibility falls on the women's shoulders. And women, because of that, they take that on. And oftentimes, they become a martyr or a victim. Um,
Mm.
but what I am seeing also is that men are more willing, dads, they're more willing to step in and support their partner. Um, and I think that there's a difficulty in women letting go of some of that control, because it's so deeply programmed in us that this is our
Mm.
role, this is what we're meant to do, no one can do it as good as me. And to a certain extent, I think there's a little bit of truth there, just because energetically, when we speak of the mother archetype, or when we speak of divine feminine qualities, it's those qualities that are so needed right now in the family home, in
Mm.
the collective. Um, and they know that. We know that. However, um, because of the pressure, because we're so squeezed, all of those beautiful motherly qualities, um, like softness and compassion and rest and sensuality and nurturing, they're getting squeezed out of us because we women have adopted so many masculine qualities to survive in the modern world, which is that,
Mm.
like, take action and be hard and get the job done at whatever cost and go go go. um, so I think there's a lot of confusion right now
Right.
in the collective and inside the family home, and with the roles that we are meant to be living in our lives as women.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I related a lot to, a lot of people have like this day, it's like a David Goggins mindset, which is, constantly work, pushing to pain. Success is the more I do. The more I do, the more success I get, the more money I earn, the better my business. And we've sort of glorified being an overworker and being a workaholic in certainly in the West, if you like. And I also, believe in what you're saying is women have been conditioned to step into the masculine in this part of the world, that they're almost competing with men. And I feel like there's an element that it's frowned upon for a woman to look after the children and maybe be the one that being the nurturer and live in the house environment, and looking after the family unit, if you like, if they're not working. It's sort of that's frowned upon, that, the woman would do that type of role and the man would go to work. Like maybe it's an old style culture where the woman would look after the family unit, the man would go to work. But for me, that's a dynamic that can work as long as it's agreed on both parties. But equally, you've got to be very careful this day and age, if you like, in how you word that. I think because, there's nothing wrong with anybody, man or woman, staying at home. There's nothing wrong with man or woman going to work and seeking success. But to me, at what cost to the family unit is that happening would be number one. But number two would be, I agree, economically, would be amazed to have both parents work. to financially survive. And if we're locked in survival, we're not going to be open to love, compassion, empathy, nurturing, rest. We're going to be locked in, more do, go. And then equally, we've got devices that are disconnecting us so much when with our family and when with our children. I think I was driving down the road locally to me, and there's a girl walking down the road holding a baby's hand, pushing a pram. Sorry, with a little toddler next to her while pushing a pram, while on a phone. And I wonder how much that's happening in the family house and in the family unit, how much kids are actually on, it's easy to put our kids on their devices, isn't it? And because we've always got something else to do, again, as part of this doing culture. Um, which for me and my understandings is, this absolutely has an effect on the relationship with the child, with the mother and the father, which then drives a lack of safety maybe within them. And then, ties into different maybe behavioral issues that we're seeing with children in terms of the rise of different, ADHD and, concentration disorders and whatever else, in terms of effects we're seeing. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I love this word that you just used, which is safety. And, that actually is a very feminine word. That is actually a very beautiful word to associate with the mother archetype, safety. And that, from an evolutionary perspective, is generally what the woman, the mother, the feminine offered. Is that safety, is to keep everyone safe, to keep everyone nurtured, and that safety comes from a softness and an openness and a vulnerability as well in the modern world. That safety comes from seeing and understanding others in relationship. And I think that I was just at a talk recently at Medicine Festival with Zach Bush, who is just a profound leader in the world when it comes to the collective change that we need to see happening in the food system, in the medical system, in the spiritual world. He's really across it all. And he was talking about the role of the masculine and how this is the change that needs to happen for the collective change to happen. And the role of the masculine needs to be to open the heart and to soften and to be guided by the mother. For that reason, because safety is ultimately what every single human being is seeking. The nervous system of every single human being, especially a dependent child, they're seeking safety. And if both parents are squeezed and pressured and reaching burnout, then they don't feel safe within themselves. So their nervous system isn't feeling safe, and then they're not able to give that safety to their children. And because of those masculine types of qualities that seem to have overtaken in the modern world, that go and do and be bigger and be better mentality, it's applied to the education system, it's applied to discipline, it's applied to career, and there's no safety in that. So I think that bringing us back to a place where we can all reconnect to ourselves, come into our heart, which, if you think about it, all it means is taking a moment of pause, taking a moment of pause to allow whatever emotional reaction that you're having to settle, to come out of the brain, the rational mind, because that can solve problems to a certain extent. But when you come into the heart, you're able to connect to something deeper, something more intuitive. You're connecting to your soul. And that is where we can all start to find better answers, or see people in a way that they need to be seen. Because when someone is seen and when someone is heard, they will feel safe.
Mm.
And that can simply happen by us just slowing down and pausing so we can drop into our heart.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. And I think when, through studying men's work, if you like, and, one of the best men's coaches for me is John Marland. He probably is the top men's coach. But he speaks of, anything other than expanded depth of consciousness is feminine in nature. So when we have got men out there, by the way, who are constantly on the ground, they're constantly doing, they're constantly overworking, they're constantly pushing, they're pushing into pain. And we've got women equally doing the same. But it's because we actually lose that, our core identity of masculine energy, which means to be grounded in conscious awareness of what we're doing. So when and how that's actually behind what we're striving towards, and it's behind every action, it's behind you know, every conversation. There's a level of stillness that's there, that's actually guiding the whole process, because we're actually in touch with that part of ourselves while we're guiding the world. So there's an element of stillness within every action. And that seems to be, it's a big part of the work I do, but it's a big element that's missing with men, because we're always seeking outside.
Mm.
We're seeking for the next thing. And, likewise, if women are, maybe not embodying this spaciousness within themselves, there's an element that is always seeking, which is pulling them into a masculine dominated world. But it's not a masculine dominated world embodying the core principle of masculinity, which means expanded consciousness and spaciousness that can navigate everything else that we're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's my own understanding of how I like to support men, if you like, in how they're actually showing up. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to hear what you would say on and how men are actually showing up, and even women, to the same extent, in how we're trying to get it right. We are getting it wrong in some areas, of course. We're trying to improve. But equally, what I see with a lot of men is this need to be perfect, as a father and as a partner, which is leading us to get it wrong, in terms of, trying to be perfect, but growing this internal resentment. Like, men are wanting to show up in so many ways, but it's like we don't know how. Like, we want to be there more for our partner, and there might be an element of women not wanting to let go of that control, but equally it's not knowing how to be there. And then we're wanting to show up for our children in being at every single event, in being at every school, meeting that they have take place, and not missing any family get-togethers. But equally, there's an element of resentment that's building in them, because we are showing up, but there can be a passiveness to men in the relationship by trying to be too nice and too perfect, and equally with our children, that we can miss an element of discipline, which again is a strong pillar of masculinity, conscious discipline and conscious direction, and consciously holding the family unit and the space in which for things to unravel. So what would your viewpoint be on that, Amanda?
So I think what you were speaking to
Mm.
earlier about, was it conscious awareness? Is that what you
Yeah,
were?
yeah.
Yeah. So I love that, and I think that there's something really beautiful there, and the language that I kind of use with that is intention,
Mm.
and I think that, when as a mindfulness coach, I'm a mindfulness coach and I'm a somatic coach, trauma informed somatics, and that's what I work with. I work with the nervous system, with the somatics and the body, and I work with the mind and the body in mindfulness. And when it comes to mindfulness, it's all about, like, being present. It's being present with what is, and we are so busy in our lives that we don't have time to pause and be present with what is. So we're running on autopilot. And when you're running on autopilot, it's really difficult, which means that your body's doing one thing and your mind is doing another thing. So you might be here in body, but your mind is traveling to thousands of different places. And so you can't have that conscious awareness. You can't have that intention for life when you're running on autopilot. So with the mindfulness work that I do, it's really important to have this intention for who you are and for what you want in life, because then that can direct and motivate your energy. So I think with men, with dads, and equally with moms, this is a lot of the work that I do is, okay, what is your intention as a parent? You know, what was your conditioning from your childhood? How were you parented? And what are you modeling? What are you mirroring in your family home? And what are you counter mirroring? And what do you want to be as a parent? What's your intention? And then what is your intention for your child? Because every child is different. And I think that what we're seeing in the modern world with children is that, they are adopting from early stages inside the womb. They are adopting our nervous system. They are adopting our cortisol levels. They are adopting our stress. They're adopting our anxiety. We're giving all of that to them. So they're coming out into this world primed and ready to fight because they've been programmed for that from inside the womb, for a dangerous, stressed out world. So it's difficult when a child is having big emotions or behavior problems for parents to show up in the way that they want to, because it's easier to check out in a way. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this behavior. I don't know how to handle this emotion. I can't get it right. I can't get it perfect. So I'm gonna be passive. And that's when it comes back to the intention. Well, what is your intention? What is your intention for being a parent, a father? What is the legacy you want to leave? What is your vision for yourself as a dad? What are your goals? How are you going to achieve that? What is your intention behind your parenting? And these children, these unique individual beings that have come through you, what is your intention for them? What do they need? What is their unique need? Do they need safety? Do they need connection? Do they need resilience? Do they need whatever it might be? What is your intention for showing up for them?
Yeah.
So then in those moments where they feel like, oh, I can't get it perfect, so I'm going to be passive, they remind themselves of those two intentions. And then that can motivate their action, motivate how they move forward in their role of a man, in their role of a father.
Yeah, there's a, I don't know if you've seen it, there was a Gabon Mate documentary called Utero. I don't know if you've seen it, and it was talking directly to that, which you're talking to about the nervous system of the child in the mum's womb and how that affects how the child then shows up. So the relationship dynamics maybe that is happening during the pregnancy, that then if you're, your wife and if you're a husband, if you like, and you're really angry, abrupt, stressed out, that's going to pass on to your wife or your partner, which is then going to pass on to your child, and they're going to come out having inherited the nervous system of the environment you've created.
Exactly.
And I can speak to that because of my own experience, like with my own birth, if you like, in terms of what happened when I was born, and the stress my mum and dad were under, how that created anxiety in me, growing up into being a man, and coupled with being brought up in an environment sometimes that probably, well, absolutely no probably about it. I've downloaded as being an unsafe environment for me, which has then led me to maybe act in certain ways that I've had to go back and try to undo some of them processes and disconnect from, the energetics that are keeping me locked in the past. But something, a really good analogy that I like to use, and you use it really well in terms of space internally. Like, how do we know that we are in survival and that we're locked in this overdoing and autopilot? And the way I understand it with myself is I can internally feel a lack of space in my chest, in my body. And then I go into maybe overthinking and overdoing and overcompensating and burning myself and burning the candle at both ends. But an analogy I use is life's moving at a certain pace, like actual life, which is nature, what the pace we're meant to be moving at. And
Right.
then we're trying to move at a pace that's faster than life. So it's like two cars. If you could be moving at the same pace, you could talk to each other. But when we're moving faster than life, you're no longer connected to actually what's happening in the moment and connected to life, that you're moving too quickly. So you're missing everything that's happening. You may be missing the synchronicities. You're missing your child growing. You're missing them moments. You're missing out on being attuned to your partner. You're constantly locked in this mode of trying to get somewhere or trying to avoid feeling something. And I just feel like that analogy really works well for me in understanding the speed at which we're being asked to move as well. I think, this is obviously, I put this on the parent as well and on the person. How we're showing up is 100% our responsibility. How we show up, it's on us. But equally, the demands placed upon us are making us move a little bit more quickly. But that then is being, the onus is on us to slow things down as much as we possibly can, in order not to burn out and in order not to, in some elements, affect the family dynamic in the way that we are. Because, a lot of men, we are overworking, but there is a lot of men they are trying to show up in the relationship. That they absolutely are trying to show up better. They are trying to show up as better fathers. They are trying to, be everything of the living embodiment of what is now being asked of the modern man. But there's a struggle with embodiment.
Mm.
Yeah, so there's a knowledge. A lot of men have the knowledge. Yeah, I want to show up as a better person. I want to show up as the man that I'm being asked to be. But there's a struggle with getting this intellect into the body because we're moving so fast. It's as if we can't take the information in and get it embodied as quickly as it's needed sometimes, because the world's moving that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are two things that you said there that I'd love to touch on, which
Yeah.
is the first thing is to attune to.
Mm.
And I think that this is one of the most beautiful skills that we can all develop as human beings, especially as parents, because to attune means to be able to connect and see and hear and understand the other person that you're in relationship with. And I think that what gets missed, people often say, oh, I can feel their energy, or I walked into the room and you could cut the tension with a knife, or I think that we know, but we don't consciously recognize enough, because it's so unconscious, how we pick up on these messages, from these unspoken messages from
Mm.
other people. So our children are going to pick up on that as well. If you walk into the door and you've been elevated and activated all day from your job, and you had an interaction with your boss and an email from a colleague, and all you want to do is like eat your dinner and then get to Netflix or crack open the beer, kids are going to pick up on that because they are so attuned. They have to be attuned because they're dependent. So they're constantly searching their environment for cues of safety or cues of threat. And if you walk in that door, elevated, activated, stressed because of this, that, and the other, your child, they won't have the language to express that, but they are going to pick up on that. They're going to pick up on that cue of danger.
Mm.
And and so to attune to ourselves, first of all, and to say, okay, let me pause for 60 seconds and down regulate before I walk into my family and greet them after or come downstairs after a day of Zoom meetings, whatever it might be. Let me just pause and transition into this other role, attune to myself, check in with my breath, check in with my body, and be ready to listen. And this is another mindfulness skill that is so important for the modern human, which is, and it helps with attunement as well, which is to listen. If we could just drop our defenses, drop our armor, drop controlling the situation, drop blaming someone else, and just be open to listen in that moment. That's the pause we need to drop into the heart and attune to the person in front of us and create that relationship that has depth, and that is slowing down. Because oftentimes, and this is the other thing I wanted to talk about, slowing down, because that analogy you gave, I love that. That's so brilliant. And I think you're really onto something with that. And I talk a lot about slowing down in my work. And, sometimes we can't take things off of our to-do list. We have to get the tasks done, but we can slow down our mind, because the mind, however fast it's going, will create a busy body, create a stress response, create overwhelm. Even if I'm sitting here at my desk typing an email, thinking about the 10,000 things that I have to get done for the rest of the day, that's creating more activation and armor. So we can't attune. We can't stop and listen. So when we slow the mind down by taking those 60 seconds to 2 minutes to check in with ourselves, check in with our breath, and, down regulate before we go greet the family, that's slowing down. It takes 2 minutes, or while we're chopping the vegetables, we can be working with our breath. We can do 5 in, 5 out, 5 in, 5 out. And then you're putting your attention on something in the present moment and you're slowing your mind down. So it's not racing and activating your body, thinking about everything in the future. So I think those two things to create a different dynamic in the modern family home between women, men, moms, dads, and kids is to slow down so we can start to, number one, attune to ourselves and then be more open to attune to the needs of the person in front of us. And the best way to do that is through listening, first of all.
Yeah, I love that. I think, when I use the analogy sometimes with a guitar, you would tune that instrument and you know whether it's in tune because you can feel it, the tune of it. So you know whether your body's in tune. And equally, when tuning in with somebody else, can you feel them? Is there an element of you're in your head? No,
Yes.
I use you can't mentally intellectualize an emotion. So if someone is in a mental process and someone is activated and they want to be felt, then we have to feel the emotion and not try to fix it with mind chatter or, a mental construct of logic. An analogy I use is if your child comes to you really scared in the middle of the night and said, I've just had a nightmare, Daddy, and you say, go back to your room. There's no monsters in your room. Stop being silly. You've just mentally met an emotion and completely missed the attunement. The attunement would have been, let me come into your room and you tell me all about why you're scared so I can understand. And then you're creating safety. You're creating sort of relational coherence, nervous system to nervous system. Your child will then, explain the emotion, they'll feel felt. And then you can go into bringing logic into it once you've down regulated maybe their nervous system, rather than shutting down an emotion because you're instantly going, no, that's not true. Go to bed and don't be stupid. And that is going to shut down an emotion where your child may never come to you next time they're scared because they get made to feel wrong. So that is a lovely little way that I use the story as an analogy to men in terms of how we can better attune to our children and even our partners when they're delivering an emotion, with men a lot of the time being so in the head, logicalizing things to people. but just, I'm just wary of time, Amanda. So,
It's
I want to
okay.
respect it.
What I wanted to say to that was that, like, I
Yeah,
love that because it's like being rational isn't going
yeah,
to change the family home. Being emotional will. And this
yeah,
word emotional, it's got such a bad rap, but
yeah.
really, it's one of our bodies. Like, we have a physical body right here. We're
Mm,
physical. We have a mental body. We think, we process. We have an emotional body. It's just who we
mm,
are. It's like fat, protein, and carbohydrates. We've got three
yeah.
macronutrients. Well, we've got four bodies. We've got physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And,
Mm,
and we've forgotten about that emotional body, and it's gotten such a bad rap. And I think bringing that into our consciousness and being intentional with how we understand our feelings, understand other feelings. First of all, we have to start to notice that we're having emotions because so many of us just don't. And
mm,
and and sometimes if we're having a more deeper emotional experience, it's often just described as oh, I feel weird. I feel something, I don't know. I feel weird. I don't know. And so many of us just don't know. And so let's get curious. Okay,
mm,
well, what does weird mean? Like, how can you break that down? How can you tune into your body? Where are you feeling tight? Where are you feeling squeezed? So I think that working with that emotional body and letting the rational come later um, is like the first step. It's the primary step. Let's all get emotional and less
mm.
rational. That's what I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think, another word I use with the men is, feeling is the secret. Like, we have to begin to feel. Um, you know, not making the mind an enemy, but the mind's a tool. So use the mind as a tool, but equally your emotions a tool, and not to be shut down. But it's helping, people to understand if we are shut down. Because a lot of people don't understand that they are shut down. They think that they feel.
They do.
And there's the word in it. You think that you feel, but you feel a feeling. You don't think a feeling.
Yeah.
So actually, the amount of men that come to me, feeling that everything is perfect
Mhm.
sometimes, and that, there's nothing to go deeper into.
Yeah.
I just need help for the external, but the more deeply that we feel, the further we can go externally. We can only go as far in life as to the deepness that we know ourselves. Not just being an external success, by the way, but actually being a living embodiment of happiness, because
Mm.
that's what we all want. We're all seeking for happiness and enjoyment, and it's having the capacity and the fluidity, if you like, to move through our emotional experience with ease and grace, without shutting it down. There's a range of human emotions that depth, if you like, brings. But a lot of people maybe they're only seeking sometimes the surface level of even mindfulness, of even
Yeah.
embodiment, of even somatics, of only wanting a nice experience, of what that brings without actually. I say there's a price to pay for change, which means you're gonna have to meet your greatness, but you're equally gonna have to meet the things that you're shutting down, because you need to become whole and you need to include that in order to get to where you want to go. So it's about unlocking all them doors and essentially elevating who you are. But knowing your darkness is a key gateway, if you like, to get into where you want to go in life, as a parent, as a partner. The dynamics of how that shows up in relationships, and equally how that shows up in yourself, whether that is looking at trauma, somatics, emotional release, all the type of work you do, Amanda. I think it's much, much needed, and I think things are slowly changing. And certainly for men, they're wanting to do these things, but there's definitely an element of hesitation. That is naturally going to be there for most people, isn't there? So yeah, what I'd like to do, Amanda, is just wrap it up with just some final words. It's been absolutely amazing. Feel like we haven't got through half the stuff we could have. We
I
could do
agree.
5 hours.
There's so much more we could talk about, isn't
Oh,
there? We'll have to do a
yeah,
part two one
we
day.
will do it. We will absolutely do it again. We could do a monthly one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just wrapping it up, I think just some closing points or some words from you, of any advice for men or women or children that might listen to this, and equally, how to find you and work with you.
Yeah.
Yourself some, where you can be found. Give yourself a bit of a plug if you like.
So, I believe in human beings. I really do. I love human beings, and I love that we are all here on this planet at this time to work together to figure this out and to continue to evolve humanity. And I'm so excited to be a part of that journey. Like, I have so much faith in us. So, you know, we've got to keep feeling. We've got to start feeling. We've got
Mm,
to understand our emotions, and and we've got to start modeling to the younger generation how to do that. And we can't do that if we're not doing it ourselves. So it all starts with us as the mother and the father inside the family home, and to work as a team to get aligned on that. It's so important to attune to each other, to listen to each other, to drop into our hearts. And that's a lot of the work that I do. So as a parent and child coach, I work with whole families, I work with women, and and this is the place I bring people to a place of harmony within the family home
mm,
and within themselves, to reconnect to themselves. And people can find me on Instagram. That's a good way to find me. It's Amanda_Ashy. They can check out my website, which is actually undergoing some changes at the moment, but that's amandaashyboyd.com. That will be changing soon. But yeah, the best way to reach out to me at the moment is Instagram, and
mm.
a lot of my work comes through that, and a lot of connections come through that.
Wow, brilliant. Honestly, thank you so much for your time. Deep conversation and lots of education. So thank you very much, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you back on for the part two. Okay.
Great. Thanks,
So yeah,
Paul.
we'll wrap it up. I will see you very soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.
And bye.
Bye.